On this episode of Athletic Training Chat, we have another installment of our student series with Ashley Cameron, who just finished up her master's degree from the University of Idaho and reached out to us on social media. So thank you for doing that, to share her story about what she learned throughout her experience with athletic training that extended beyond just figuring out that's what she wanted to get her master's degree in. Great conversation, a lot of insights from Ashley, things that I wish I would have thought of when I was a student and definitely did not. And kudos to her and everyone else who is thinking about those things at this point in their career. Really good things to take away and reflect upon, whether you're currently already practicing as an athletic trainer or someone who's considering it as a student. So thank you for sharing those, Ashley. We are powered by Mueller Sports Medicine. Turn to them for all your sports medicine needs. New things coming up. This will be right before NATA, some new launches there to check out. So be sure to head over to the Mueller booth if you're heading there, or pay attention to what's out there online afterwards. And we are also brought to you by Healthy Roster, your go-to when it comes to athletic training, EMR, doing everything they can to make your life easier when it comes to documentation and everything else in running your athletic training clinic. Without further ado, please enjoy this episode. Well, welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. We have another installment of our student series with Ashley Cameron. She reached out to us and wanted to share her story and just her experiences. And so before we get into all that, I just want to turn it over to you, Ashley, to share a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are currently.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just finished my master's of science and athletic training at University of Idaho. So just passed my BOC, just waiting for my license now. So it's been fun.
Congratulations on all fronts. That's awesome.
But I grew up over in Port Orchard, Washington, and I've played soccer my entire life, so I've been around athletics.
Okay,
And I got involved in sports medicine. I think it was my sophomore year of high school. We had a sports medicine program, and I kind of just really fell in love with it. I wasn't really too into it, and then I worked a wrestling meet, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is what I want to do." It was super fun.
interesting.
Yeah, high intensity. I just really loved it. Um, and then yeah, I just wanted to get into sports, stay in this profession, and yeah, that's really how I got into it. So
Now, graduating from University of Idaho, did you go undergrad then grad, or was it
um,
the mix, kind of the
yeah,
3+2?
I did a 3+2. I actually
Okay.
did 2 years at Montana State University Billings because I was playing soccer,
Oh,
but
okay.
at the time, the program isn't just something that I wanted to pursue. I liked University of Idaho's program more,
Sure.
so I transferred to do that one. So I was technically a 3+2 student, so did everything in 5 years.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
What does that undergrad end up being in that type of like setup then? I'm not as familiar with it
Yeah,
because I'm fully traditional, the
yeah.
undergrad and then get a grad degree in something.
Mhm. I think it's pretty normal. It's like 2 years or 3 years of normal undergrad, and then your fourth year is like when you're starting your master's program, but I got my bachelor's degree December 2023. So
What was that in, if you don't mind me asking? Just out of
so
curiosity.
let's see, it's on my wall. Exercise, sports, and health science.
Makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I know that's one that I've talked to, the 3+2 probably makes it a little harder, but people that were looking at the 4+2 of like, if you know what you want to do early in undergrad and you can kind of pick something that complements your soon to be master's AT degree, like you really become a dual threat very quickly. So I'm just curious how people approach all that. I personally would not have had that awareness going into undergrad, but that's just me. So you mentioned back in high school, got involved with a sports medicine, group that was there. Um, was it athletic training right from the beginning because that's what you saw, or did you look at other, allied health professions, physical therapy, or other those things along the way?
Mhm. I before I did sports medicine, I was looking at like doing medical school.
Okay.
like my freshman and early sophomore year. And then it was mostly just athletic training. Like I dove deep into it really quickly, looked at like PT schools and stuff, but didn't really like the loans, didn't like how long the schooling was. So athletic training was really what I wanted to do.
Awesome.
Mhm.
I think as we were going back and forth, you had mentioned, that clinical experience has really been something that's impacted you. It's funny, I was just having a conversation with a coworker of mine. I work in a clinic and we do some outreach, and she was like, I will never volunteer for a wrestling match ever. Like that, she's just, I don't want anything to do with it. So it's fun to hear, you who are like, yep, that's what hooked me.
Yeah.
What have those clinical experiences taught you, kind of good highlights, lessons learned, how have you applied that along with your schooling?
Well, my clinical experiences, with our university, you have to hit like certain check boxes and stuff. So I've done like high school. We have a student-run clinic at our university, basketball, football. I just finished up with the Seattle Sounders, so I have like a huge array of different experiences. And I think throughout all of it, I've really just learned to be open-minded. I thought when I first got into the program that I really wanted to do like professional football or like be at the professional level. And now I'm like,
Sure.
I could be happy at any site that I work at or any place that I work at, honestly. So really just being open-minded, and you can really take everything that you learn at any clinical experience into your next clinical experience. Like stuff that I learned at high school, I brought in when I worked at football. Stuff that I learned for like men's basketball, I took it with me to the Sounders. And the stuff that I just learned now, I will definitely take with me into my first job. So just taking all of that experience has been really cool.
What are some of the things, because you always, especially like the Sounders, um, Idaho's D1 FBS football,
Yeah, D1 FCS.
FCS, FCS, that's right. I always get them confused. You know, bigger-ish, the football program bigger-ish, obviously Sounders, you're talking professional level. What did you take from there that you're like, I could see this being really useful in the high school? Because obviously you're practicing in terms of having some of the most abundant resources at those levels.
Mhm. Yeah, I think even like though we have all the resources, you're still going back to those roots of like having really good eval skills and having really good communication skills. So even if you don't have the most amount of resources, it's always going to come back to how good is your eval skills, how good is your history going to be, and how well you can communicate with others. So just understanding the importance of that is something that I took away.
Gotcha. No, no specific technology that you could like jimmy
Um,
at a different level.
I'm trying to think, like, I guess if you had a really high-end high school,
Sure.
maybe like stat sports, stuff like that could be useful, but I'm not sure how well that would go over to high school level. You need like specific training for it and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I was like you. I thought I wanted, my goal was always, Division 1 football is what I wanted to be, and I ended up working Division 1 track for a while, and then ultimately ended up at a Division 3 school, back working football, but a Division 3 school, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything because it was a great experience. But similarly, trying to find those things that you could pull from those other experiences to, amplify what you're doing at that level, and then from the collegiate setting to the clinic setting, what other things could you bring in that maybe just didn't make the connection before?
mhm.
We also talked about being engaged in service, and remind me, what have you all done service wise?
For Idaho with our athletic training student organization, I got to serve as president, so that was super cool. And then with our District 10 Student Senate, I was able to serve as secretary. So I've been a part of that for 2 years. And yeah, it's been really cool just like meeting a whole bunch of different people. I feel like I have friends all over the district now and kind of all over the nation from doing it. And just kind of seeing the ins and outs of what goes into planning this kind of stuff has been really cool.
What have been some like other valuable takeaways? Because it's always a hot topic in AT, especially
Mhm.
you get on the social media levels of they're volunteer organizations to a degree, but always, who's doing what, and there's always the get involved. What was the biggest like takeaway or thing that you would pass along to other students or even just other clinicians that happen to be reading it
Mhm,
on why it was beneficial?
mhm. Sorry if you hear my cat. He's getting very active right now.
All good.
Um,
We've had one jump up on somebody else on the back of someone's chair during an episode. So I think we kept it in on the blooper reel.
yeah. Um, I think things that you're talking about, like, what do I find valuable from it and why I would recommend it?
Yeah, just you did it. You mentioned, getting to meet people, kind of seeing, what was like the biggest takeaways from those
Hmm.
experiences that you're like, this is, why I think it's something maybe you'll want to continue to do or not.
Yeah.
You could say that too. But yeah, that's kind of any more details on that.
Yeah. Um, I definitely would recommend doing it just to see if you like it or not. I did have a lot of fun doing it, and I know that it definitely is a hot topic right now. But I think my biggest takeaway was just getting to meet people from all of these different schools that have all of these different backgrounds and expanding your network. And you kind of, from being involved, I feel like I have a better appreciation for what these people do because it's easy from the outside perspective to kind of be like, yeah, they're not really doing anything for us and they're not listening to what athletic trainers need. And I do agree that there is some change that needs to be made. But it is really hard. It's really hard to like please everyone and to be able to get your foot in the door and start making those changes. And it just takes a really long time. So I think I have a better appreciation for the service that these people in these positions are doing because a lot of it is volunteer work. Like you're not getting paid for it. Um, okay, calm down. You're not getting paid for it. So I just have a better appreciation for what some of these people are doing.
I think that would be my biggest takeaway. I'd echo too from my time in it is, if you really want to make the change, get involved to be a part of it to see what actually happens. And it's tough. And I get where people get frustrated, especially because you're putting money in, but that's also a really good reason to try and be
Yeah.
a part of it because you are doing that to, make it worth your while, essentially, for doing said thing. So I agree there. How did you balance the time commitment with that? Because as you mentioned, it's all volunteer, almost exclusively, I think up until the very, very top levels. But how did you balance your time, being a student, all your clinical rotations, also, trying to be involved in the service aspect? And it's not like you were just on a committee. You were at some pretty, levels that people are looking to for guidance and, leadership from.
Hmm. Um, I think my biggest thing was time management. In undergrad, I started developing some better study habits and some better time management and organization. So that helped a lot. But I think just like getting stuff done early, like getting my schoolwork done before it was due, was really important for me. Yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind. Like you kind of just have to take it one day at a time when you have all this stuff and like studying for the BOC as well. Oh, hey. Um, but just taking it one day at a time, I really suggest getting those study habits down early into your program. The second year gets really crazy, especially if you're doing all this other service stuff. So time management is my number one answer for that.
If you can nail it down early, it's a whole lot easier as you
Oh
get going
yeah.
in your career. I look back now and I was like, I was busy in grad school and all the things, but I don't think I realized how much free time I had until I've gotten to this stage of my life, and it seems
Yeah.
like I have even less. So I hear you there.
Mhm.
What else have you taken away from your experience as an AT student? Obviously you've accomplished the big things, graduated, BOC, licensure is just that formality step now. But big takeaways that you've had over the course of that experience.
Mhm. I think I've done like a lot of self-research, I guess, this past semester. In our program, we have to do these huge papers about your clinical experiences and asking yourself clinical questions. And one of them I asked myself was, how can I create a better work-life balance?
Sure.
So that was really huge for me and something that I've taken away, having those difficult conversations with my preceptors about I would like a little bit more time off, which feels weird, like very weird to ask as a student. But you need that time off when you're studying for the BOC, and um, yeah, just having those difficult conversations, being able to say no to stuff, and separating yourself from being an athletic training student at home. I found a lot of really fun hobbies this semester, like rock climbing and just like being outside. It's really fun being home in Washington again and being able to hike again and stuff. So being able to separate myself from being an athletic training student, now an athletic trainer, has been something that's huge for me. I feel like the more I was able to do that, the more happy I felt at home, and also the I was able to be a better clinician when I was at my clinical site because I was 100% tuned into what I needed to do when I was there. So that way, when I went home, could just completely relax.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Excuse me. What else haven't we covered around your experience as a student that you'd like to touch on before we go into the AT chat questions?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think I just had some more advice for future students, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd say stay open-minded and curious about everything. You're going to learn so much and experience so much. So don't focus in on exactly what your preceptor did. It's your job to take away everything that you've learned and apply it in a way that's unique to you and your patients, their goals and experiences. Don't feel embarrassed to ask questions. I feel like I didn't want to ask questions a lot. I
Sure.
really wish I asked more. I had a lot of great conversations with my preceptors just by asking a simple question. um, Trusting yourself too. I feel like a lot of students don't trust their gut, and even though you're still a student, you know a lot more than you give yourself credit for. Um, and then again, I 100% recommend just trying to get involved in some sort of volunteer position, whether that's a regional board or a state board, just to see what goes on. It might not be for you, but it's really cool just to like see what happens, be able to meet all those people, and that way, maybe in the future you don't want to do that, but you can have a better appreciation for those that
Right.
want to do that. So, yeah.
Your first point especially rings true. I remember I went to a soft tissue course in grad school and I came out of it. I was like, I'm going to fix my whole injury report. I got all the things now. It's done. And not shockingly, in hindsight, it helped a lot of people and it was good in the way, but it didn't fix everything. And,
Yeah.
that was a lesson learned from there of, having general principles with a lot of flexibility in them just because everybody responds differently to whatever it is that we are going to try and help them with. So,
Mhm. Yeah, we had some of those like CEU type courses as well, and I feel like afterwards I would be like, I need to try this on every single thing. But
right.
you realize it's like that's not gonna work all the time, so you have to figure out when to use it, when to not use it. So it's a really fun
That's
puzzle.
the art part of it, right? Figuring out when and how and how if the patient even responds to it. They may, respond to something that's different, but yeah,
Yeah.
and those out is its own unique aspect. So,
Mhm.
well, awesome. Ready for the AT chat questions then?
Yep, let's do it.
Obviously, freshly graduated, we talked about, but so not technically a current student, but as a newly graduated student, where do you see AT going in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a great question. I feel like with especially with the H2F program and all of that going on, I think the idea of ATs becoming independent practitioners will probably be explored more. I'm not sure if it's been talked about in the past or not. But I started looking into reasons why we have to practice under a physician and why we
Sure.
have to work under working orders. And there's not really a definitive answer besides just legal stuff, and that's what's in the BOC and the state legislation. And I do know that that connection with your physician is really important, but I think opening up the doors to be able to be an independent practitioner can really help a lot of those people in private practice and kind of expand what athletic trainers can do. So I think it's a really cool idea to explore. I'm not sure how that will work and how that will go, but I think that would be something that I would like to see within the next 5 to 10, maybe 15 years.
Yeah, just to bring that around to your point about the importance of service. I was in Wisconsin and worked on the board there, and we were actually able to get the requirement of having a physician protocol with a signature on it removed from our practice act. And learning the history of that, like that was the way to get ATs going and they combine everything. And so that's what got the profession started. And it was time for an update. So it does, at least in Wisconsin, open up an avenue to an AT going out on their own and not having to have a physician overseeing them and figure out the legalities and the liability and all the things with that. So it just opens up a whole new level of opportunity for athletic trainers to use their skills in a different setting. So, but that was done because of the Government Affairs Committee and the State Association. So, plug for the importance of what people do. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hmm.
What advice would you go back and give yourself as a student, even back into high school if you want, when you were, looking at the AT profession that the advice you already gave, what did you go back and tell yourself personally?
What would I go back and tell myself? I would tell myself not to take it so seriously.
Uh-huh.
Um, I feel like I focused a lot on my schooling, and that's great and everything, but I do think I missed out on some of the more like traditional college experiences.
Sure.
I still had a great time, but there are some things that I wish I could go back and do. And it's like, yeah, you're doing schooling all the time as a college student and in your grad school, but just like make sure to enjoy the moments of you're still in college, like still have fun, you're still a kid, like go around, go to parties, go out with your friends, with your classmates. So I tell myself not to take it too seriously.
I like it.
Hmm.
What has been the most influential resource you have come across so far in your career and education?
I would definitely say my classmates with our program, we're allowed to do our clinical sites almost anywhere in the nation. As long as it's a clinical site with the University of Idaho, you can go
Sure.
anywhere. So just talking with my classmates, I feel like I've learned so much from them when we come back for our finals week in our summer classes. We all have such different experiences. So really my classmates in my cohort have been the my most influential resource and just studying with them too. Yeah.
Yeah, always a good thing. You kind of touched on this, but we'll ask it anyway. As a former AT student now, how did you take care of yourself?
Yeah, my second year especially, just separating myself from being an AT student, taking that time away, having your me time. I didn't really do that too much my first year, and I could definitely like feel the physical effects of that. But I think it's super important to make those habits now because when you are a professional, I feel like it's going to be so much harder to create those habits then. But yeah, just having me time, making sure I'm eating right, physically fit, stuff like that. So.
If you could change or eliminate one thing within the AT profession, it could be a modality, a common practice, a mindset, really anything of your choosing.
Mhm.
What would it be?
Um, Ooh, I feel like I kind of have two for this one.
Yeah, go for it.
Specifically within the AT profession, I think sometimes we do things without a good reason for doing them, like making patients do stem and ice, even though they probably could just do some rehab exercises and get out the door. So trying to find that balance between like I am working with somebody else and I need them to do something right now, so that way they're not just sitting around and waiting.
Sure.
So trying to find that balance because I know it can be really difficult, especially like in the high school setting or in the college setting when you have so many patients coming in at once and you're the only practitioner. Um, so that's one thing I would eliminate. And then kind of overall within healthcare and like the sports performance side, I feel like I've seen at the college level kind of a lack of communication between sports medicine staff and like strength and conditioning staff.
Sure.
That connection, I feel like, has been really bad, which is kind of crazy to me because they go really hand in hand. Like you have a patient who's doing rehab, they're going to be in the strength room, but they also have exercises to do, an athletic training clinic. Um, so I think I would want to see better communication among those sides.
It's so important. And I've been relatively fortunate. Like it's hard because there can be a lot of crossover and there's a lot of gray area. ATs that can be strength coaches that some of the rehab stuff isn't exactly hard to figure out. Like you can do it, but yeah, being able to work with someone that you can trust. I was very fortunate to work with a guy that I could give some very loose restrictions, and I could trust him enough to make really good decisions to not further put that person, at risk under those restrictions, and it just made life better for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't I didn't have to sit there and come up with a prescriptive thing, but also could trust that they were going to listen to the patient and do what was best for them within the guidelines of those restrictions.
Yeah. Yeah, this last year going from football and then working with the Sounders, it was crazy to see like the stark contrast because
Sure.
with the Sounders, they meet every single morning between the sports performance staff and the sports medicine staff just to make sure everybody's on the same page and there's just such a high level communication that I
Yeah.
think really any setting could benefit from. So,
So important. Absolutely. Well, last question. What does becoming an athletic trainer mean to you?
oh man, I've been reflecting on this one a lot. I think it's kind of a weird end of the road and beginning of a road for me. I've known that I've wanted to do this for so long, so it's crazy that it's like finally here and I can call myself an athletic trainer. So it's kind of bittersweet, I guess, and really exciting. Just means new beginnings, for me, and finally being able to put all this knowledge that I have to use. So just really exciting times.
Absolutely. Well, sounds like, having just met you, you deserve it for all the, much you've invested in it. So it'll be awesome that you'll be able to get that going. Do you have first job lined up?
Um, yes and no.
Okay.
I have a job lined up, but I'm kind of looking around. I want to stay in the area, so yeah, just figuring out what setting I want to work in. It's nice to not have my eyes completely set on like college or high school, so
Sure.
there's
Sure.
a few
Yeah.
more opportunities there.
Yeah. It's always that hard part when you come out of it because the hardest time to look for a job is when you don't have one.
Yes.
Much easier when you know you've got a paycheck coming in from something else. So
Yeah.
I understand that.
Mhm.
Well, if anybody wanted to connect with you, reach out, had questions about your experience or, the University of Idaho or whatever it may be, what would be the best place for them to do that?
I'm pretty active on Instagram, so it's _Ashley_Cameron_. Um, I don't have Twitter, and I'm not active on Facebook at all. So really, Instagram's the best way to find me.
Perfect. Well, that's easy enough to do, and we'll link that up on the show page as always. But I really appreciate you reaching out. It was awesome to connect. We'll always be happily to do a follow up in however long, once you get going in your career and whatnot to see how everything's going. But really appreciate you taking the time and actually, reaching out initially to get this set up.
Yeah, thank you. It was super fun.
Thank you for checking out this episode. We hope you took away some of the great insights that Ashley had. Again, whether you're already in your career or just thinking about going into the profession, check them out, apply them. Really good insights from her, and really glad she reached out to share those with us. CEUs are coming up. If you're at any convention, congratulations, you'll get a bunch there. But if you aren't able to and looking for some real affordable ones and some free ones, check out clinicallypressed.org/courses for all kinds of CEU options and our partnership with AT Corner and To the Bone, as well as Midwest Concussion Clinic. There's so many good options on there. Again, a bunch free, some paid, but we made them as affordable as we possibly could. And 50% of all proceeds go to our overarching cold tub donation program. So you're really supporting a great cause when it comes to that as well. So check those out, clinicallypressed.org/courses. We'll catch you next episode.